You know how Paul wrote mostly to the Gentiles and Peter, James, and John wrote mostly to the Jews? And Peter, James, and John emphasize a lot against licentiousness, that is, abusing the grace of God to sin, do whatever we want, thinking that believing in Jesus Christ means we can do whatever we want. Peter, James, and John wrote against that kind of thinking a lot. And Paul wrote against legalism a lot. And I think the reason for that is the Jews, they already grew up with legalism. They grew up under the law, and their temptation when they received Christ, or when they were about to receive Christ, was to think, oh, that means I can do whatever I want now. So Peter, James, and John had to write against that kind of thinking. And then for Paul, the Gentiles, they had already experienced a lot of licentious living without law, and their temptation, once they had come to Christ or were thinking about coming to Christ, their temptation was what the Jews were coming at them with, which was legalism, to think that they could have Christ plus works for salvation. So Paul wrote against that a lot. But Paul's letters and James, Peter, and John's letters, they harmonize perfectly. Jesus himself said, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod." Herod and his followers were licentious. The Pharisees were legalistic, thinking they could save themselves by keeping the law. Jesus said to beware of both. So there is no balance between the two. There is just avoid both. No balance, just avoid them like the plague. Instead, the way we are to think of is what Paul said in Galatians 2, "I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I." That is, I don't get to do whatever I want. Not I, but Christ liveth in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness comes by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. If we could save ourselves by keeping the law, Christ is dead in vain. And at the same time, because he is in us and he is without sin, like John says in 1 John, you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him is no sin. So if he's in us, then in us is no sin. Sin has no place in our lives anymore. We live by the power of God, the grace of God. Sin shall not have the dominion over you, for you're not under the law, not under the way of, oh, I need to keep these laws myself in my own strength, not under the law, but under grace. Grace enables us to keep the righteousness of the law, which is all about love. Like Jesus said, that's the greatest commandment. Love is, and 1 John writes about how a new commandment I write into you, that you love one another. The old commandment is the word that you had from the beginning, which is to believe on the name of the Son of God.